Hello. Allow me to waffle a little bit. This actually is the 64th book that I've written, but it's actually the 5th in the Romp in Time book. As I said, as I mentioned, that I'm going to do the Romp in Time books in order, and I won't make you wait for all that amount of time. But I've also lied to you because I said that the second book was complicated, and I said that the other one was going to be smooth. And I've just listened to the AI version of the 5th one, which was which was called Doppelgängers, which is doppelgangers. It's not smooth at all. So I've lied to you. I didn't realise how not smooth it is. It's not smooth. It will keep you on your toes. Again, I don't really quite know how I've written it, but but I enjoyed listening to it, and but it does make sense. Makes sense to me. But after all, it is a time travel novel, and time travel is difficult, and it should blow your mind a little bit. And I like writing time travel because it's difficult. And if it isn't difficult, then it's not proper time travel. And I do like writing proper time travel. I mean, if you were suddenly put back in, say, 1942, you wouldn't just stand there and think, oh, it's 1942. Oh, look at that. You would be absolutely horrified. And I think the first thing that you would do, you would be petrified that you wouldn't be able to get home. In fact, I think you'd probably need a new pair of underpants. That would be your first impression. Your brain wouldn't be able to handle it. You would be terrified, especially if you didn't know how you got there in the first place. Hence, see my very first book, Daffodils in Autumn, which is about how a young woman and her daughter got suddenly transported back to World War II. Anywho, won't go into that. But yes, time travel is supposed to be complicated. And A Romp in Time, all 7 books, is about that. Yes, waffling again. Do like that word. So here it is, book 5. Slightly more complicated than what I remember, but it all works out in the end. And in 2 days' time, book 6. And in 2 days after that, book 7. There won't be a book 8. Probably. No, I'm too old to write another one. My memory's going. But for the time being, I hope you listen to it, and I hope you enjoy it. Or at least I hope you find it amusing. Goodness me, I've gone on for 4 minutes. Enough.
Welcome to a deep dive that, well, let's just say it requires you to strap yourselves in, because we are plunging into source material that challenges the very fabric of reality.
And not just reality, memory, relationships, domestic harmony.
Oh, especially domestic harmony. We're exploring the events of a single, unbelievably chaotic month, January of 2028.
And calling it chaotic is probably an understatement. The narrator of this story, Molly T., who has seen some truly wild things. She opens her account by admitting this whole saga gave her a migraine, just trying to write it down.
A migraine in print, that's how she puts it.
Yeah, she talks about spending late nights just trying to untangle the chronology because, and this is the key, the existence of duplicate people just made no sense of her whatsoever.
And this context is absolutely vital for you, the listener. This isn't just some random, bizarre adventure. Molly T is very specific about this. She's chronicling this as the main character's fifth crusade through time.
Right, and she plans for it to be the fifth story in a planned series of 7 books.
So we're in the thick of it here.
We are. And because of that, she's not just, recounting events. She's exploring this huge overarching theme, the severe mental and emotional damage that happens when you subject the human mind to this much temporal instability.
And this episode, this month in January 2028, it sounds like it pushed every single character right to the absolute edge.
To the precipice of their sanity and their relationships. It's a complete mess.
Okay, so let's try to unpack this paradoxical nightmare. Our mission today is, well, it's a big one. We need to untangle the impossible timeline of the Vas.
Right, identifying the stranded future Va and the rescued young Va.
We also have to look at the threat posed by their new, very nosy neighbors and then map out this unbelievably complex mission they undertake.
A mission which involves, 3 different things at once?
At least. They have to fix history by rescuing a stranded time traveler, which is already a huge deal.
But at the same time, they have to ensure Anne Boleyn's historical safety and keep this dangerous android out of the wrong hands. It's a logistical nightmare. It's more than that. It's a nightmare wrapped in a paradox. I mean, think about it. They're trying to solve problems that were created by their own previous attempts to solve problems.
Our future attempts.
Or future attempts. It's temporal recursion at its absolute messiest. The cure literally becomes the disease.
All right, let's start at the beginning, or what passes for the beginning in this story. We begin in Wapping High Street in 2028.
And our heroes, if you can call them that, are trying to live a normal, settled life. Or as normal as it gets when you live with extremely well-adapted historical figures.
Let's start with them, the ex-royals. Tell us about Anne B., who was, of course, once Anne Boleyn.
Anne has gone through a really incredible transformation. She's 45 now, and Molly notes that she has ripened. She's no longer that suspicious, angry, fearful young woman they saved from the block in 1536.
She's a woman of the world now.
A high-spirited, generous, but still very restrained woman of the world. She travels by herself, takes the fast train from Waterloo to Lyme Regis. She just fits in.
Which is amazing considering the trauma she carries. But there are still some old habits, some Tudor things that she just can't shake, right?
Oh, definitely. The most obvious are linguistic. She avoids modern slang, but if she really loses her temper, she still starts cursing, and always in French.
And the other thing, the deeper thing.
Her complete and total inability to trust the advances of men. Her one marriage to Henry VIII was so catastrophic that it shaped her forever. She simply cannot and will not trust men in any kind of intimate way.
That makes perfect sense. But that deep-seated trauma, that history, she also uses it for more convenient purposes sometimes.
She absolutely does. Which brings us to this wonderful little anecdote with the local women's association.
Ah, yes, Mrs. Jane Seymour.
Yes, the irony of the name is not lost on anyone. So, Mrs. Seymour is the treasurer, and she interrupts Molly and Anne during lunch. Molly is clearly annoyed.
And Anne picks up on this immediately.
Instantly. Yeah. And she decides to deploy a bit of social warfare. She just switches on a dime back to the way she spoke right after they pulled her out of 1536.
Full of these and thous.
Full on these and thous, talk of knaveries and pratfalls. She basically weaponizes her archaic vocabulary.
And what works?
It's an immediate social repellent. Molly says she almost choked on her hock, trying not to laugh. It only took a few minutes of Anne sounding like she'd stepped out of a Shakespeare play for Mrs. Seymour to just excuse herself, pretending she had an urgent text.
It's a brilliant way to use your past as a tool.
It really is.
Yeah.
And her brother, George Boleyn, he's adjusted just as well, hasn't he? Going from the second Viscount of Rochford to, what does Molly call him?
A mere penny-plain commoner.
George is fascinating. He's maybe the most adaptable of them all. Okay. He gets incarcerated at one point in a modern American facility, and his takeaway is just incredible.
He compares it to?
He tells Anne that being imprisoned in the New World was like having honey for tea every day. I mean, when you think about it, he was facing the brutal execution standards in the 16th century, where prison was basically a death sentence from disease. So for him, modern prison is a luxury.
It tells you everything you need to know about how far we've come. And that brings us to Molly T. herself. the person writing all this down. She finally tells her husband, Mary, her biggest secret.
This is a huge moment. After decades of marriage, she finally tells him the truth, that she was born around 1781 and was a fallen courtesan in 19th century London, a woman who is almost 250 years old.
And his reaction is not what you'd expect. No shock, no disbelief.
Not at all. Mary, who's described as a very ordinary man, into his football and his job, his reaction is just, I bloody well knew it.
He knew it. How?
He'd connected the dots just from her speech patterns, the little inflections, the forgotten phrases, the cadence of her voice. It all betrayed her 19th century origins to him.
So the secret didn't change a thing?
Nothing. In a way, her being a 2.5-century-old time traveler was less of a surprise than the fact that she'd kept it hidden for so long.
And this is apparently why their boys, Alfred and Harry, are getting suspicious.
Exactly. They can't reconcile the mother they know. This woman who cooks bland food and isn't great at decorating, a not imaginative woman, with the author of these wild, intricate stories about time travel.
The contrast is just too much. But the real friction in the house, the central domestic crisis, is between their hosts, Stewart and Frankie.
Oh, absolutely. They're approaching middle age. They're in separate bedrooms. They're talking about divorce. And it's not just, normal marital problem.
It's a direct consequence of their lifestyle.
It's the existential hangover of living a life without consequences. They live this hedonist lifestyle, taking insane risks, because they always knew Vanna Traveler could just rewind and fix everything. They had no fear.
But once the adventure stopped,
they were left with this crushing boredom. They were bored with stability, and worse, they got bored with each other.
And the only thing they still have in common is their love for their foster kids, Bonnie and Sarah.
Who are, by the way, studying history at college, thanks to all the Tudor intrigue stories Anne has been telling them for years.
But the tension between Stewart and Frankie gets so bad that someone has to step in. And it's the last person you'd expect.
It is. Anne Boleyn. She sees how their toxicity is affecting the girls, and she decides enough is enough.
And the warning she gives them is chilling.
It is. She calls them aside and delivers this incredibly severe threat. Molly's account says she specifically mentioned a blade, cutting, and manhood.
So she threatened castration. A former queen who knows exactly what it's like to face a blade for domestic issues threatens her hosts with castration.
And it was delivered with absolute conviction. It worked instantly, they got the message loud and clear, and it forced them, at least temporarily, to be civil.
As if all that wasn't enough, a massive new problem arrives next door, the Broadbent twins.
Hermione and Harry Broadbent, they're 28, described as nerds and geniuses, and technically not twins. One born just before midnight on New Year's Eve, the other just after.
And their family story is just pure modern comedy.
It is. Their mom, Joy, loves Amazon and bingo. She wins the lottery the day after she divorces their dad.
Which is how they can afford to move next door in Wapping.
Exactly. And their names, Hermione and Harry, were because their dad was a huge fan of a certain 20th century author. Joy apparently put her foot down before they ended up with a Ronald or Ronalda.
And the dynamic with the new neighbors is tense from the start.
Oh, yeah. Joy is worried Stewart and Frankie will be a detrimental effect on Harry. But the twins themselves, obsessed with sci-fi and tech, they find their new neighbors absolutely fascinating.
They're watching. They're the perfect storm of competence and obsession, just waiting for something to happen.
And something does. The spark for this whole temporal mess happens when Anne, just fed up with Stewart and Frankie's bickering, suggests a family treat.
A trip to the Tower of London on January 15th.
A pretty loaded choice for Anne and George, you'd think. And during the visit, Stewart and Frankie are arguing, but it's not about normal things. It's about their past adventures, losing an arm, their friend Timus.
And the fact they can't get couples therapy because they can't exactly talk about time travel.
And this time, they're being listened to. Hermione and Harry confess later they overheard it all. Frankie left a phone call running. They heard enough about somebody called Harry and strange dates to get completely hooked.
And it's at the tower that Anne makes a crucial historical correction.
She does. She dismisses the official execution site and points to the real spot, a pustule site where a team of archaeologists led by a Professor Stephen Smith are digging.
And that small detail, her personal knowledge, is what kicks everything off.
A few days later, Professor Smith shows up at their door. He visits young Va, and he shows her a plain wooden box. His team just unearthed that exact dig site.
And inside the box
is an older, completely powerless traveler, the PT, and a handwritten note.
What does it say?
It's a desperate plea. To Vavi of Whitechapel, Rescue me from 1st June 1536 where AB died. I have no power.
So Va realizes, in that moment, that a future version of herself is stranded in the past, on Anne Boleyn's execution day.
Exactly. But the old traveler is dead. She needs a plan, a way to get power.
And the plan she comes up with is rooted in something her friend Timus did.
Right. She explains that Timus hid about 200 nodes. These are basically massive hidden temporal power stations all over history. He hid them under future landmarks.
It's Shard Tower, or in this case, the Flint Tower at the Tower of London.
So the plan is complex. She'll use her normal traveler to jump back to 1088 when the Flint Tower is being built. Then she'll use her working traveler to inductively charge the powerless one from the node hidden there, and then proceed to 1536 for the rescue.
It's a two-step, highly technical operation. What could possibly go wrong?
So Va sets the plan in motion. She leaves for 1045 from the Tower of London. But the plan is compromised before she even leaves the present.
Because of the neighbors?
Of course. Hermione and Harry are there, filming the whole thing. They capture the red, effervescing sphere the moment she vanishes, and they upload it to a private cloud account.
So they have proof.
They have proof. And they immediately confront Stewart and Frankie with it. It's thinly veiled blackmail. So now the secret is well and truly out.
Meanwhile, Va's mission is underway, but it's about to go catastrophically wrong. She makes it to 1088 and starts charging the device.
And she's completely focused. The sources describe this pleasant buzzing as the energy transfers. It's a very precise procedure, but her time jump wasn't perfect.
He's not alone.
Not at all. As she's focused on the traveler, she's stalked by 3 large, snarling animals. Wolves, maybe. And before she can do anything,
She's captured by a huge man described only as the Beast.
he drags her off and imprisons her, chained to a wall in a cold, dark, round tower. And this is where her long life becomes an absolute curse.
She's there for 6 years, from 1045 to 1051.
And the suffering she endures it's just visceral. She loses a third of her body weight, her higher mind, the part of her that understands physics and history. It just retreats.
Molly describes her as becoming a strange hybrid between an intelligent, upright, female-looking human and an unusually smooth but dirty-skinned primate.
She becomes feral. She loses all hope of rescue. The only way she survives is by learning to eat vermin and rustling invertebrates. It's a complete descent into a primitive state. The mental damage is total.
And she only gets out when the Beast finally dies.
And even then, it's just muscle memory. She finds her old traveler around his neck, and she activates it. It's a pure, desperate act of escape.
And it takes her to the only date it was programmed for, June 1st, 1536, Anne Boleyn's execution.
The cosmic joke. The self-fulfilling prophecy. She escaped 6 years of hell only to land stranded at a historical tragedy.
Now she knows what she has to do.
She understands the loop. So she takes the now powerless traveler, the PT, the thing that started all of this, and the note, and she buries them in the box at the real execution site.
Fulfilling the conditions for Professor Smith to find it in 2028, she initiates her own rescue, but only after 6 years of unimaginable suffering.
Okay, so back in 2028, Stewart, Frankie, and George realize Va is gone, and they figure out what they need to do. They have to steal the PT from the professor and go back to save her before she gets captured in 1045.
And to do that, they need to charge their own traveler, so they use another one of Timus's nodes.
The one under the future Shard Tower. They have to bubble into 1924 London to access it. And Stewart is immediately disgusted by the stinking air.
But George, the former Viscount, he's mesmerized. He loves the whooshing of time travel. It's still a miracle to him.
That's a great little character detail. So once they're charged, they head to 1536. But not just for Va. They have to carry out Va's other plan.
Swapping the android.
Right. They arrive just after the execution, and they see the 5 ladies carrying Anne's casket into the chapel.
And their arrival is not exactly subtle.
Not at all. They materialize too close to some cleaning women, who immediately start shrieking and crossing themselves, thinking they've seen demons. It's total chaos.
So they have to move fast. They get into the chapel. They kidnap the android Anne Boleyn from the casket.
And then they have to simulate the weight so no one notices. So they fill the empty casket with rocks and colored paving stones.
Paving stones. It's so absurd. They're replacing a royal corpse with landscaping supplies.
Desperate times, I suppose. So they secure the android. They hide it in the basement of the Queen's house, but they set the date to September 20, 1540.
Why that date?
For easy remembrance, it's Frankie's mother's birthday.
Of course it is. Okay, so with the android secured, they finally travel back to 1045, to the moment just before Va was captured.
and they appear right in front of her while she's charging the node. She's suspicious, obviously. She knows changing her own past could have terrible ramifications.
But George convinces her. He says, "Your ramifications against my love for you." And they tell her they're saving her from very bad things.
So young Va is saved. And she believes that the beast timeline, those 6 years of suffering, has been erased.
And this is the monumental twist of the whole story. Molly T is very clear. The timeline did not vanish.
This is the temporal horror at the heart of it. The Va who was left behind, the one they didn't rescue from 1540, she continued to exist. She wasn't overwritten. She's now known as Old Insane Va.
And she lived for nearly 500
For
years.
488 years. She found refuge in a nunnery, used her advanced knowledge to survive, even grew crude penicillin to nurse patients.
Yeah.
She just endured, waiting, and stewing in the bitterness of being abandoned.
And her endgame.
Pure temporal spite. She lives all the way to 2028, steals the PT from Professor Smith herself, closing that part of the loop, and shows up at Stewart and Frankie's door.
Yeah.
She looks 5 centuries older, has a wart under her eye, and just asks to be welcomed in. The timeline of suffering has come home.
Stewart opens the door, and the chaos is just immediate. Young Va sees her 500-year-older self, a living testament to the hell she barely escaped.
And George, who saved her out of love, he's so horrified he just retreats to the kitchen. He can't even look at her.
And Old Insane Va, she's not there to make friends.
Not at all. She immediately lays into Frankie for abandoning her back in 1540. The two Vas have this standoff. Young Va insists the old one shouldn't exist, that she was rescued.
And Old Insane Va's response is just chilling.
She says, why that particular timeline did not vanish when you traveled back and rescued her from an earlier time remained unknown even to us. It's the ultimate confirmation. Time travel doesn't erase, it creates.
It creates parallel realities.
Yeah.
And as if two Vas weren't enough, the house is about to get even more crowded.
Yes. In walk older Stewart, who's 71 and thin with a gray mustache, and older Frankie, 61, much plumper, wearing bifocals. They arrive from 2058.
And pink jumpsuits.
In nauseating pink jumpsuits and weird hats, yes. Their purpose is vague. They're there to observe a pivotal point in the timeline, but they won't say what it is.
But older Stewart does offer a little hope for the younger fighting couple.
He does. He sees them bickering and just casually says, the little spat you two are undergoing at the moment will solve itself. He points out that they're still together 30 years from now.
A small comfort in a house full of duplicates. But this house of horrors doesn't stay a secret for long.
No, because old insane Va, in a pure act of revenge for her centuries of isolation, tips off the media.
She just calls them.
She tells them about the time machine, the whole chaotic situation. Suddenly there's a media circus outside the Wapping house. Kids are chanting, Doctor Who.
And in the middle of this media storm, who shows up?
The final insult, Professor Stephen Smith, the archaeologist whose big started this whole mess. He wants an explanation.
And young Stewart, who has clearly just embraced the madness at this point, gives him one.
He gives him the full, unvarnished, insane truth. He says, this is Va, whom you have met, and this is Va as she will be in about 500 years' time. And next to her is my husband, age 61, and then myself, age 71.
How does Smith react?
He thinks it's a prank, a cruel hazing. So young Va decides to teach him, and the blackmailing neighbors, a lesson they won't forget.
A very severe lesson.
She uses the Traveler and sends Smith, Hermione, and Harry to 6515 BC for a few minutes. It's a terrifying abuse of power just to break their perception of reality.
And it works. Frankie notes later that Smith returned with a full-blown nervous breakdown and was admitted to a sanatorium.
That's the real cost of seeing the truth.
So, with the professor out of the way, the focus turns back to the domestic situation. Young Stewart and Frankie are watching their older selves.
And they notice that the older versions don't argue anymore. They seem comfortable. Old Stewart says it's because the food in 2058 is crap, and he's just happy to be somewhere with decent cooking.
And this leads to a huge realization for young Frankie.
A profound one. He's talking to the girls about their holiday, and he suddenly realizes. He remembers that he and Stewart used to fight all the time, viciously. But in this new reality, right now, they treat each other with respect and love.
So the timeline shifted.
Vaughn confirms it. The only thing that changed was Frankie's perception. He had somehow caused a small, positive timeline split in their relationship. The chaos actually fixed their marriage.
But there's a cost, isn't there?
There is. He feels detached from his own memories. This new warmth he feels for Stewart is unfamiliar. He's stable, but he's also a stranger to his own emotional history.
Okay, so next on the to-do list. The android. They have to go back and get it.
Young Va young Frankie, and even old insane Va go back to 1540 to retrieve it from the Queen's house basement.
Frankie is amazed by how realistic it looks.
He is. He was expecting a dorky-looking plasticized robot, not this. Va's determined to repair it, to understand how Timus built it.
But what does Anne think when they bring it back?
She is horrified. She calls it an unholy thing, a white. She refuses to even speak to it and wants it destroyed.
But Va repairs it anyway.
She does, in her Whitechapel lab. And when she activates it, the android speaks Anne's final words from the scaffold.
Good Christian people, I am come hither to die. Va left the speech in as a macabre reminder of what's at stake.
Just incredible. So they're tying up loose ends now. What about the neighbors, Hermione and Harry? Frankie deals with them. After their little trip to 6515 BC, they are thoroughly terrified into silence. Their mother, Joy, later reports that the twins have found God and bought Bibles, and she thanks Frankie for being such a good influence.
That's one way to solve a blackmail problem. And they also close the main time loop, right?
They do. Young Stewart and Frankie go back to 2025 and bury the PT and the note in the dig site, ensuring that Professor Smith finds it, which starts the whole cycle.
But the older duplicates, older Stewart and Frankie, they're still there.
They are. They refuse to leave. Old Stewart is adamant. The food in the future is still crap, and he prefers living in 2028. They just become permanent, slightly annoying house guests.
So even with all these loops closed, some mysteries remain. The biggest one seems to be Smithers.
Yes, Smithers. Anne reports that he's with her in Lyme Regis, which implies he's been around this whole time, but nobody, not even the future selves from 2058, knows where he lives or why he's suddenly back.
And what's the solution?
There isn't one. Old Stewart just advises them to let it go. Some temporal anomalies are just too baked into reality to fix. Smithers is one of them.
And then there's the girls' holiday to Cornwall.
Right. Bonnie and Sarah refuse to cancel. They argue pretty logically that since the older versions of their dads are here, the future's already broken. So any warnings about them going missing might not even be true anymore.
And young Frankie, in his new, more agreeable state, just lets them go.
It's a nice moment of them asserting their own free will against all this temporal chaos.
But the future and the past still cast a long shadow. Old insane Va is still there.
And she's still bitter. She pushes young Va to deal with the one last historical error they know about. A letter Anne wrote to her mother that needs to be secured.
So even though things seem normal, young Ra knows they're not.
Not at all. She says that old insane Va's continued existence and the fact that their two travelers can still communicate, it all points to a deep, fundamental instability that hasn't been resolved. The parallel world didn't vanish, it just merged with theirs.
So after this whole ordeal, 2 Vas, 2 Stewarts, an android, a traumatized archaeologist, a media circus, what's the final decision?
The whole group, completely exhausted, comes to a single conclusion. They agree to never use the Traveler again.
Never.
Well, only in truly exceptional circumstances. The current timeline is just too fragile, too confusing, and too prone to these bizarre, unpredictable splits. They finally understand the true cost.
What an absolutely mind-bending deep dive. We've covered saving a Va, dealing with her 500-year-older self, hosting future duplicates, kidnapping an archaeologist, and fixing a broken marriage, all while dodging the press.
And I think the key lesson here, which is embodied by old insane Va, is that time travel isn't a clean edit. It's not a single line you can just fix. Correcting an event, like saving young Va, doesn't erase the timeline of suffering. The trauma persists.
It creates a new reality that just exists alongside the old one. Molly T's migraine was the perfect way to describe it. The human mind just isn't built to handle these non-linear, parallel realities.
And we see the psychological price. Frankie's marriage is fixed, but he's detached from his own memories. Va's body is saved, but her soul is literally fractured into a bitter duplicate. If these people who are experts at this can't handle the fallout, what does that say about the consequences of our own choices?
The cost of that kind of power is ultimately your sanity.
Exactly.
So the group decided to never use the Traveler again, except in exceptional circumstances. But old insane Va is still there, living in their house, fully aware of everything they can do and still bitter about her past. How long do you think it'll be before those exceptional circumstances, or just plain boredom, force them to dive back in?
The biggest danger might not be some mistake in the past. It might be the elderly, powerful, and very angry version of themselves living in the kitchen.
The Fifth Crusade is over, but the war for their own sanity is clearly far from finished.
It's just getting started.
Indeed. Until next time, keep digging.